Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we're going to talk about baseball, and we're going to talk about where Scott Garibay is going to end up in Dungeons and Dragons history, in my humble opinion. All right, so I absolutely love what I do here. I get to talk about Dungeons and Dragons open and honestly, and I'll tell you right now, that's not that rare. I think, and the only way you end up here is if you have a passion for Dungeons and Dragons and you're not fool enough to try to go pro, right? Because the reality is, I get to speak openly and honestly about Dungeons and Dragons, and it's incredibly a good example of this is I'm going to say it flat out, Nerdarchy. Those guys. So I worked with Nerdarchy early in my career. It exploded in tears and flames. It did not end well. But in my humble opinion, it's not even a debate. David told me he threw me under the bus. He said it literally, over the phone to me, and he did, right? And it took us 5 years to reconcile, right? And hey, at this point, I've forgiven David, and I think the whole thing happened. Why did it happen? I'm going to tell you right now, okay? Skiing. You ever skied, right? There's people who stay on the bunny slopes their whole lives, right? And there are people who ski black diamond their entire lives. If you ski black diamond, you're going to wrap around a tree every now and then. You're going to fall off a cliff, right? And that's exactly what happens in my life. I end up running headlong into trees and falling off cliffs because I don't deal with bunny slopes anymore. I'm only on the black diamonds now, right? I talk about Dungeons and Dragons in ways that nobody else does. And I take the glory, the met, and the shame connected to it, right? And so I have this incredibly unique view of Dungeons and Dragons. I'm legitimately the only person on the planet who has this belief, and that belief is, in 1974, Gary Gygax reached the pinnacle of a desire to fix humanity going forward. And so he knew, in order to build a human improvement engine, self-help has the worst reputation ever. So he built a self-help engine, and in my humble opinion, he disguised it as a game. And not only is Dungeons and Dragons a self-help engine, it is now transforming into a society help engine. Right? I think it is literally helping the world because it is growing as a global property, and it's reaching more and more people. And I think there are things in it that are literally helping to shape nations together and form peace in some shocking ways. No one else on the planet believes this, right? So some days it makes me sad because I think I'm right, but I also love to be right, and I am not a winsome person. I realize that about myself. I have this brilliant concept. I think it's 100% true, and I want to give it to the world, right? But I fail to give it to the world, right? Well, I'm succeeding in getting the message out. What I'm failing at is to convert people to this concept, right? But I still have hope. You know what gives me hope? Bill James, okay? So if you've ever seen Moneyball is about an MLB team manager, and an MLB wonk who take the work of Bill James, which is sabermetrics. Bill James invented sabermetrics. He invented it with the Bill James baseball abstracts. Bill James was a security guard who worked in a pork and beans cannery, and while he was there, he wrote the most influential abstract. He wrote the most influential body of knowledge about how to determine to purchase players and win the World Series that has ever been written. A dude sitting as a security guard in a pork and beans cannery knew more about baseball than every other person who is literally working in baseball, right? And that's where I think Scott Garibay is going to end up. And I'm going to be the Bill James of Dungeons and Dragons, in my humble opinion. I think I know a truth about Dungeons and Dragons that nobody else knows. And Bill James knew a truth about Dungeons and Dragons that nobody else knew, and that was sabermetrics, right? Now, here's the difference. Baseball has a lot of people who are passionate about it, so his work was pulled up, right? The reality is there are not a lot of people right now, right, that are passionate about Dungeons and Dragons at the level of baseball. We'll get there someday, but right now it's just not the case. So I think what's going to happen is, and what really gives me a lot of hope and what makes me very comfortable with me spending the time to do this is it doesn't matter to me whether my sabermetrics is discovered while I'm alive or dead. I just want the truth to be known about Dungeons and Dragons, as I understand it and as it is in my humble opinion, right? And so I think the future of Scott Garibay is to become the Bill James of Dungeons and Dragons, right? Bill James transformed baseball because he understood it better than anybody who literally did it for a living. That's me. I don't do Dungeons and Dragons for a living. I don't make a dime on it, but I love it, and I'll tell you right now, I'm convinced I know it better than anybody on this planet, and I know the truth about it, in my humble opinion. I'm eager to hear your humble opinion. All that is my opinion. I'm very eager to hear yours. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing. Have a wonderful millennium.